Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Note to Self. Today's episode is part 3 of my 5-part Unbothered Energy series. So if you haven't checked out the previous 2 episodes, I definitely recommend moving through those in order because it's going to allow these shifts and these breakthroughs to land all the more deeply in your system. We are doing some serious rewiring in this series, really integrating that unbothered energy so that you can move through your life so much more freely. And today's episode is very important. This is a biggie. I'm going to be talking about something that drains people's energy far more than they realize, and that is explaining themselves. Explaining their choices, explaining their boundaries, explaining their personality, their intentions. And if you've ever found yourself replaying conversations in your head, wishing you had said something differently so someone would understand you, you are not alone. But there comes a moment in life where you realize something incredibly freeing, and that is people will see you through the lens that they have already chosen, and no amount of explaining yourself will change that. Today, I'm going to talk about why over-explaining is one of the biggest energy leaks in your life, and how letting go of the need to be understood by everyone is a powerful step towards unbothered energy. So, let's start with a simple question. Why do we feel the need to explain ourselves so much? Most of the time, it comes down to a very human desire, and that is we want to be understood. We want people to see our intentions. We want people to see that we are good, thoughtful, kind, responsible people. And there's nothing wrong with that because connection itself requires understanding. But where things start to become draining is when we begin trying to control how everyone perceives us. We start explaining ourselves, not to create clarity, but to protect our image. And this often comes from conditioning. Many people grew up in environments where they had to justify themselves constantly, explain why they made a choice, why they felt a certain way, explain why they needed something. So the habit of explaining becomes automatic. But the truth is, the older you get, the more you realize something important. You cannot control other people's interpretations of you. Even if you explain yourself perfectly, even if your intentions are pure, even if you communicate clearly, people still filter everything through their own experiences, through their own insecurities, through their own expectations, through the stories they are already telling themselves about the world. Trying to control everyone's perception of you is a bit like trying to adjust every mirror in a house full of distorted glass. Some mirrors are simply warped. No matter how clearly you stand in front of them, the reflection will still be distorted. The more energy you spend trying to correct every distorted mirror, the more exhausted you become. There is also something psychological happening when we get caught in the cycle of explaining ourselves. Psychologists talk about something called rumination. Rumination is when your mind repeatedly replays a situation, trying to analyze it or fix it. You replay the conversation. You think about what you should have said. You imagine how you could have explained it better. But research shows that rumination is strongly associated with increased anxiety, stress, and emotional exhaustion. Your brain is essentially stuck in a loop. And many of these loops begin with a simple thought. If I could just explain myself better, they would understand. But the reality is that understanding requires willingness. If someone is not open to understanding you, no amount of explaining will get you there. So if you're somebody, side note here, who struggles with rumination, if me speaking into that really highlighted like, ooh, yeah, that's something that I would really like to work on. I recently did an episode on rumination, so just scroll up and download that one. It's there for you. So let's get back into the unbothered energy here. Unbothered energy begins with something incredibly powerful, and that is self-trust. When you trust yourself, you no longer feel the need to defend every decision you make. You no longer feel the need to convince everyone of your intentions or the choices that you make in your life. You begin to recognize that disagreement and misunderstanding are simply a part of life. Think of it like this. Imagine you're walking down a path. You know where you're going, but as you walk, people standing along the path start shouting opinions. You should go left. You're going the wrong way. Why are you walking that way? That's not the path. Now imagine stopping to explain your reasoning to every single person along that pathway. You would never move forward. You would spend your entire life explaining your direction instead of walking it. Self-trust allows you to keep walking. There is also an incredible amount of freedom in learning to let people be wrong about you. Some people will misunderstand you. Some people will misinterpret your actions. Some people will create stories about you that are not accurate. And your job is to not chase down every story and correct it. Your job is to live your life in alignment with who you are. Because over time, consistency speaks louder than explanations. Your character becomes clear through your actions, not through endless defense of your intentions. Now, there's a phrase that I love that captures this perfectly. Let people misunderstand you while you continue becoming. Because when you stop chasing approval, something very interesting happens. You reclaim enormous amounts of energy. Energy that was previously spent on overthinking, replaying conversations, trying to manage perceptions. And that energy becomes available again, available for your growth, your creativity, your relationships with people who actually understand you. I feel called to share a bit of a personal example here. So many of you know I started my entrepreneurial journey on YouTube, where I shared so much of my life online. And this was a decade ago or so. I shared becoming a minimalist in ways and moving to Italy and the journey of finding plant medicine and then sharing about that. I went through many different phases in my 20s, and a lot of that was documented online, which gave a lot of space for people to post judgment. There was a lot of trolling that happened in my past. There was a lot that I actually personally had to overcome with sharing myself online and being vulnerable in that way. And what was very interesting is that there were numerous times when someone shared with me in person, who I ended up meeting at like a meetup, or they ran into me in Toronto or in Rome, wherever I was, and they said, listen, I want to share something with you. When I first saw X type of content, like maybe it was on minimalism, or maybe it was on quitting your corporate job and moving to Rome. I heard it for everything, all different subjects. Plant medicine, for example, like when I first shared my journeys with ayahuasca. And people openly shared, like, I was judging you. I thought that you were nuts. I thought you went a little bit crazy in ways. But now I understand. Now I see that you were really just going after your dreams and you made it possible. And I think that was highlighting something in me, that I wasn't letting my dreams be heard. I wasn't allowing my desires to come forth, or I was resisting something such as plant medicine that I knew I was being drawn to and curious about, but I didn't quite understand it until I actually said yes to it many years later. I've heard so many of these stories, and I share that with you because I do trust that there are some of you out there who are listening who have channels in which you share. Maybe that's on Instagram or YouTube, or you have your own podcast, or you're out there sharing in your community in ways. Other people's perceptions and receiving that sometimes will be a part of the journey, but it allows you to strengthen yourself. It allows you to strengthen your unbothered energy. Because the truth is, if you're shining your light, if you are following your path and making your dreams a reality, nothing what anyone says is going to faze you. You're just going to keep doing you. You're just going to keep along that path. Some troll that might come in with a negative comment, it's not going to stop you. And you're going to realize that, the more and more that you shine your light, the universe co-creates with you, and the opportunities, the beautiful experiences that you create and attract in your life, they stand no chance against some negative comments or some judgment. So back to the Unbothered Energy podcast. So we're talking here about people misunderstanding you. So when it comes to communication, this of course is something that's very important, because healthy relationships absolutely require communication. I want to highlight that there's a difference between communicating with someone who is open to understanding you and explaining yourself to someone who has already decided who you are. So one conversation builds connection, the other drains your energy. Learning to tell the difference is a major part of emotional maturity. So before I close out this podcast today, I want to leave you with a simple practice that you can start using immediately. The next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. The first, am I explaining to create clarity or to seek approval? The second question, is this person actually open to understanding me? And this might require you to do a bit of an emotional read on the space, right? Understanding and feeling into, is this actually safe for me to share? The third question, does this conversation deserve my energy? And if the answer to the last 2 questions is a no, it may be wiser to release the need to explain, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply just move forward. So, the identity shift I want you to carry with you from this episode is, I do not need everyone to understand me in order to move forward. Some people will understand you, some people will not, and that is okay. Your life is not meant to be spent managing everyone else's perception. It is meant to be lived. And in the next episode of this series, I'm going to be talking about something that many people underestimate, and that is silence. And why sometimes the strongest response you can give is no response at all. And how emotional restraint can be one of the most powerful tools for protecting your peace. So, thank you for being here with me on this journey of note to self. If this episode resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who might need this reminder today. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. I would love to have you along here for the journey. We've got much more incredible content to come. And I want you to remember this. You don't have to explain your path to everyone who questions it. Just keep walking. Just keep being you, because that is the magic that this world needs. And I'll see you all in part 4.